seen this movie lots of times, and I'm trying to figure out if it's delusions or maybe it is a demon. It's one of those things I try to decipher, because here in Daniel Isn't Real, we're talking about is it a delusion, is it schizophrenia or something like that, or is it just a demonic thing that's taken over? I'm going to try to figure that out here today.
Kyle and Nick on Film. I have a thought. He has maybe a different thought.
I have multiple.
We'll put our thoughts together.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe, GoatFilmReviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and once again, thanks for liking, thanks for finding us and watching. You can contact the show on Twitter and Instagram. Today, we're going to talk about what was a big hit at South by Southwest in 2019, and people kind of whispered away, kind of forgot about it. It's Daniel Isn't Real.
Yeah, so in Daniel Isn't Real, while struggling through mental health issues in his family, college freshman Luke brings his old imaginary friend Daniel back to life. At first, Daniel gives Luke all the confidence he could ever want, but Luke's about to discover how difficult it is to put Daniel away again, and Daniel wants to stay.
So this is a movie based on the book In This Way I Was Saved, based on by the author Brian, I would say, Delouve or something.
Yeah,
Delouve. He also wrote the screenplay with the writer-director Adam Egypt Mortimer. I know he has another project out after this one.
Arch Enemy,
I
believe, because he had said in an interview that he saw Arch Enemy as the second part of a trilogy,
all right,
and that he intended to kind of do the glass treatment of bringing some characters together in a third film. Yeah. I'm not sure how you would do that given this movie, but I'm curious. I guess I haven't seen the other one though.
So it's of course it's what's really effective, and I want to get that out right away. What's really effective about the movie is how it maintains a sense of unbalance throughout. You don't know if this is legitimately like it's imaginary friend, or is it's like a demonic thing that not only takes over him, Luke, but his mom, or something cosmic. In the beginning, it has this like very cosmic, almost like Uncut Gems does. So it's almost like this is a universal thing. So there's a lot of trying to navigate what it's all about.
See, I think the film gives an answer. I do think that the answer that is given as the film goes on is the answer that we're supposed to believe. But I like the question game of being asked it. I don't know, there's not a lot of films that do this well, where it makes you question all the different avenues it could go down before giving you a direct answer. And I'm okay with getting an answer. I think sometimes people are like, if it's mysterious, if we leave it open-ended, it's cooler. It's a better movie then. It's not always a better movie then. And I think in this film, what I actually appreciate more about it is I like when the film gets crazy versus when it's sane. When the film is very normal at the beginning, I was kind of losing interest a little bit. But it's when the film decides that it's going to tell you exactly what's going on that I was like, okay, you've got me.
Yeah, because you're watching, I understand why it's so hard, because there's an effective, wonderful intro to this movie that you're like, it shocks you, and you're like, wow, yeah. That's a good, solid punch to this movie. And then, of course, you get the whole backstory of his mom having a problem as well. Played wonderfully by Mary Stuart Masterson.
Yeah, I didn't. Again, when you have these smaller films, you don't expect to see names. And even the kind of joke is that we have our two leads are both the sons of famous people. We have Miles Robin, the son of Tim Robbins and Susan Sarandon, playing our lead, and then Daniel is Patrick Schwarzenegger. Who guess who he's the son of?
Maria Shriver, and
the governor's own kid. Yeah. Is helping lead this movie. So it's kind of funny in that we have those names, but you don't really expect to see that kind of out and about because it's a very smallish budget, I feel, to really kind of execute. And I like that for that budget, they're able to do some really wild stuff. I like that there's some solid practical effects work in here.
There is.
I like that even though there's a level of CG to it, there's certain times where those special effects come in CG-wise, they don't take away because they give that same kind of 80s flavor at times that Mandy had. To a much smaller extent. It's not often, but when it shows up, you kind of appreciate the fakeness that you see sometimes.
Right, the picture's up there. And I do like that. It does really divulge into a lot of different colored gels. Yeah. And it signifies a lot of warnings, like when you get the reds and the blues. And it's really a lot of kaleidoscoping of projecting the story using colors as effective medium. Yeah. Because we know when Luke puts on a red jacket and his hair slicked back, we know something's up.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
And that's the other thing. His hair bothers me. I've watched it so many times. His hair Just comb it. Get out of the way.
I'm not like it felt like a piece, didn't it? Didn't it feel kind of like he was wearing a piece? I don't know.
That's the whole part of the movie. Is like, comb your hair. Right?
And now I say this as a person who only combs his hair because his wife tells him to in the morning. It bothered me too. Like that was one of those things where it shouldn't bother you, but you just see it and you just want to grab him and straighten his hair.
So one of the interesting things is, yes, he does have an imaginary friend in the story, and it does really not a benefit for him. It really is an encouragement to do really awful things, and even as a kid. Mm-hmm. And so in the movie, as a safe way to put him, they lock him into a dollhouse, metaphorically or imaginary. And then when next time we see Daniel, he's a full-grown adult. So obviously he went through changes as Luke went through changes. He's not the same person. But also there's an imply that Daniel was part of what we saw in the beginning of the episode.
Yeah. So we get the sense that there's more to Daniel than strictly speaking. And again, opening the film with a bunch of these like truncated images, it almost loses you until you solidify your story. Like when we saw like this shooting that happens, and then we see Daniel, but then he's walking, or we see Luke, but then he's walking by this murder, and I wasn't sure if the murder was the murder we saw. Like it was all these parts of, like, I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
And similar to how Braid kind of starts, where you get all those, like, different visual images that are coming up, but I feel like this film comes together quicker, and it kind of didn't lose my engagement immediately.
Right.
And then it kind of, again, like, every time I felt my engagement losing, there was something that happened that made me go, okay. Like, you haven't completely won me over, but I'm getting there, you know?
Yeah, so if I can use a comparison like Braid, when it's very convoluted and discombobulated, that kind of gets an agitation to you. You want a little more clarity. Mm-hmm. This is a far more effective when things are discombobulated and a little unbalanced. It's a far more effective like, oh yeah, we're going to go there, or what is going on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got the idea of like putting together a puzzle where you like, just before you give up, you find two pieces that connect and you're like, wait, I can do this. Yes. 2 down, 500 to go. Like, you know, I get that kind of a sense from it. Now, the film doesn't always have that sense to it, because there's a lot of what I feel are logic gaps, specifically in the Daniel character, which kind of brings me back to questioning whether or not what we see is our answer or not, because there's bits and pieces of, in the opening of the film, we get the knowledge that you can put Daniel away in this house.
Yes.
And a 5-year-old does it. So why is he so intimidating the second time around?
Right.
You know, why is he so problematic? And I also wonder, what is Daniel's purpose? Like, we get some insight that he has been, you know, around to do this, but what is his purpose in the movie? Because it feels like it's to sex or killing. What really draws him? And if it's an animalistic thing, there's got to be more to it than that, you know?
Yeah. So there's a little more or less, we don't get motivation, and if you're right, or that we need motivation, but I understand just to be a monster, just for a monster's sake, doesn't really be an effective thing.
Yeah.
So the motivation is not key. I would say when Luke is talking to the psychiatrist, I think that is an imaginary event.
Okay.
It's an effective, I think it works, and seeing, I'm watching this 8 times, I think if that the therapist is not real, and Luke is just talking to himself, I think this story makes much more sense to me than if all other things. Because we don't see any interaction with the therapist with any other characters. And what happens to the therapist, it's kind of like, yes, if that's an effective thing, if it's only happening in Luke's mind, it's a far more effective story for me. If the therapist is not real also.
Interesting. That was not a thought I had about it. Because again, I'm a very Stonewall person. Like, I believe that Ferris Bueller is real in Ferris Bueller, okay?
And he was able to do all those things in one day, right?
That whole theory that Ferris Bueller was fake and that it's all Cameron's mind and he's doing that stuff, I believe Ferris Bueller is real. I think it's an interesting theory, but I believe in what's shown to me on screen.
Yeah.
And I do think that your idea has credence, because the therapist, I think Braun, does not do what normal therapists would suggest. Some of the things he suggests and tells and pushes are not things that I would assume a genuine person in the field to do.
Right, yes.
And so that kind of made me question, I guess, the validity of just maybe you shouldn't be talking to him specifically. But I do believe he's real. But then again, there's a lot of like unreality to the film. So
yes, and that also gives a point that sometimes this mental disorder that Luke has could be hereditary, because his mom is going through some things as well. And it's almost to the point that we almost believe that maybe Daniel's participating in her mom's problems as well. Not really as auxiliary, not direct, but more auxiliary of manipulating Luke to get her to the condition that she is in.
Yeah, and see, that's again like it gives a hint that that's where it is, but I don't know if again like give us that information. Don't pull it back. Don't make us assume that maybe he's either imaginary to her as well at some point, or that she passed it on to him. Like I'm trying to like glean something else in here that we don't really get. There's a lot of things where it's like it leaves me searching for connective tissue in the logic gaps that you as a filmmaker should just give me.
And I've seen this multiple times, and there's a lot of things that you're not going to get. It's almost very David Lynchian of several vignettes that maybe you have to piece together to solve it, but you're not going to get a lot of answers. You're going to get a lot of maybe it this way, maybe this way. Also, his relationship with her played by Sasha Lane.
Yeah, Cassie,
which is, it starts off really wrong and really awkward, but it is a necessary part of the story. I would say it's good writing because she crashes into his life. Literally.
Yes. It's good writing with her inclusion. I don't know if I buy the relationship a whole lot because we don't get to build it very much. It goes from 0 to 60 pretty quick, and I think we're meant to believe that Daniel is kind of the suave hitch of the group, where he's trying to get his buddy laid, if you will.
Right.
But I don't know if I buy that there's anything more to the Luke-Cassie relationship than the one night in bed, if you will. I don't know if I buy the relationship. So I wish that they had kind of coaxed that chemistry a little bit more.
Yeah.
We spend our time in a couple different interesting places with the movie, but if you had given me 90 minutes to make this runtime work, I would have chopped a few of these uninteresting bits out to give more time to that central relationship, because then we care more when they're forced to confront it. And there is a confrontation in that relationship. There's a few that would have meant more if it had just been put together more.
Yeah, so it almost seems like they want to know that this was toxic for both of them.
Yeah.
And you're going to amp it up to 90, but we don't really plausible that these people would even connect even after they crash into each other.
Yeah.
I totally get it when they crash into and bye-bye, and that's effective, but I don't understand they slowly get the introduction. We understand Daniel manipulation of how he can entice her and navigate around it, but it's still, after that, we don't see it. I would say the effective, to really make it to how we get to be a horror movie is really effective. Yeah, it's really some really things like, oh my god, yeah.
There's some twisted things that take place that make you wriggle and writhe, if you will, and you kind of just don't want to be there for that. And again, that's effective stuff. It's interesting. I think I had the same reaction to seeing Patrick Schwarzenegger have sex on screen as his father did, where he kind of like, I'd read this funny interview where he was just like, well, that was an interesting thing I had to witness that I didn't expect. And I kind of think the same thing, like the scene where that happens, I'm like, I didn't think we were going there. Okay, we're going there. Interesting. And I don't, there's definitely like a disturbing quality to Daniel. Like, I think he's an effective villain, if you will, or antagonist at the very least. I mean, he kind of sets the film.
Oh, it looks like Patrick is enjoying doing this.
Yeah.
He's having fun. He's having fun with the most minimal things that he has to do. But even like when Luke confronts the girl in front of the college steps.
Yes. And
Daniel's participating, and then you will honor your mind, and we all agree. Yes, we agree with her. You will honor your mind, and you deserve her, right? Yeah.
Yeah. There's that scene. Actually, I really enjoy that scene because it's one of the few areas where I hate to say that we get comedy out of the situation, because the film doesn't really hit comedy, but there are comedic bits to it in the unreality of it all.
But you understand both characters.
Yes. Yeah. And it makes you laugh because you know that Luke didn't do what he's being blamed for, and that he's stuck kind of in this situation, and so you kind of have that moment of laughter when she pulls out the pepper spray, because you're like, oh no, you don't understand, but then it's like, but you kind of do, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of, Luke, you're
not wrong for doing this, but
right, yeah, it's a wonderful comedic because you understand both characters' motivations.
Yep.
And it's going to happen as it needs to happen.
Yeah, if that scene didn't take place, the movie would have missed a very important character building, plot moving scene. It is more important than we give credence for it, you know?
Right. So, like I said, it was a big hit when it came out by South by Southwest Film Festivals. It was exploded and shotgun all over Twitter, and that's how I found it. Mm-hmm. And then after a while, I think after even Arch Enemy came, with his next movie, then it's kind of been forgotten. I think you can still find it on Amazon Prime for free if you're interested in watching it.
Yeah, it's a Shudder original, so I think you have to have Shudder in some form.
Okay.
Even if it's through your Amazon, but it is one where I think part of the problem when these companies like a Shudder picks up all these movies, They have a wonderful team that goes out and finds these really interesting filmmakers and interesting films, and they license them. But most of the time, unless you're willing to go out and buy a Blu-ray of the movie for $20, it's tough to find it unless you are a member of their group. Yeah. You know, it's kind of like the idea that they want you to stay a member so that you can check all these things can get frustrating. You know, like, I don't want to be on Disney Plus, but I got to keep up with my MCU and my Star Wars and stuff like that. So it's like, I kind of understand that, like, forced exclusionary feel that you have to get. You have to have Shudder in a lot of ways to get some of these films, and that kind of frustrates me a bit. But it also makes these movies disappear, because if it doesn't have an immediate, like, hit the first weekend it's on that service, you won't ever hear about it. I didn't hear about it until you told me to watch it a year ago,
right? And
then kept telling me to watch it.
Right, and that's one of the things, the cases with films like this, and he's explaining with the service, is that even though they're really great, I wouldn't say this is not a phenomenal movie. I think this is a really solid, good movie. Enjoyable. Like I said, I watched it 8 times because they're just trying to find out, maybe they missed something, there's maybe a solution. That's an effective, why this movie is effective, because it doesn't give you all clear answers, and you have to continue to go back and watch it. Maybe you missed something, or you can find the answers with probably not going to find all the answers, but it's effective rewatching.
Yeah, and the way that they kind of play with mental illness, they play with toxic masculinity, they play with all these different kind of factors, and I think those are mostly effective. And like I said, I appreciate a film that goes wacko and really sticks to it. It created rules. Most of the rules were maintained. There's a few that were broken. And I also question, there's an act that Luke does at the end of the film in an effort to try and stop Daniel that I did not understand why he thought that was going to work.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so, you know, real quick, pause this if you haven't seen the film. Go stream it, come back, because I'm going to talk spoilers at the ending here. Because when Luke decides, I can't stop him, so I'm going to kill myself, and that'll take him with me. When Percy Thigpen's son kills all those people, that didn't stop Daniel.
No.
When he killed himself, that didn't stop Daniel. Like, and he knows that. And it's also, you put him away when you were 5. You put him in this house.
Right, and we've seen a projection of a house that he's put into a house.
So we know that you're capable of getting rid of him. So why this giving up? Why do you think that's going to help? And then, you know, like, so that was why I felt the ending was a little underwhelming, because then we just flash back to Daniel in the final seconds, and he's back to his original form, which is a very kind of like, I love the creature design for him.
Oh, I do too. Cool. Right, yeah.
But then he's like, all right, next guy, and he goes off, and I'm like, okay, like, that's obvious, right? Like, I thought maybe it was like leaning towards a twist of some sort at that point, because it seemed so obviously not going to work.
You needed some kind of effective exposition where Luke says, you know, I can put you in a box, but you're going to come out eventually. I don't want to continue with this cycle. You need something like that.
Yeah. And the disappointing element of it is that, we've that whole ending didn't land for me in a way where it significantly dropped the way I felt about the film. I'm still positive on it. I'm more mixed than I was at 10 minutes earlier in the movie.
No, you really need a good ending for me to really like a movie, and this is really weird because I really do like this movie. I don't like the ending.
Yeah, because there's that moment where Cassie is like, I know you're in there, Luke. I'm trying to pull you out, you know? Yeah. And it reminded me of the ending of A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, where Jesse turns into Freddy Krueger, and she's trying to pull Jesse back out and turn him back to normal. It had the same kind of chemistry, because the two performers just aren't written as well in this movie, and they aren't written as well in that way to have that kind of connection, because we didn't see the relationship. But then it also has that level of, how would this work? Like, you're kind of like, this doesn't add up the way I want it to. And I just didn't buy it for me. It just significantly dropped me in the movie. And I again, more positive than negative, but more mixed than I was 10 minutes earlier in the movie.
Right. So I would say, like, it's definitely a mixture of, like, Fight Club, A Beautiful Mind, and Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2.
A couple dashes of Dr. Sleep in there, too.
Yes, yeah. But it's effective. There's really good cinematography in it. It's edited really well. Mm-hmm. They really know how to hold on to a scene and really get it over with.
This is Brett Bachman, who edited Mandy for the same company, worked with Elijah Wood on this, and he also edited the recent film Pig, which has a really tight runtime and has the same kind of general griminess to the narrative that is seen on display here, and I think they work very well.
All right, next movie I do, I'm contacting him, because he really knows how to edit a movie and keep the pacing right, and where you need to hold scenes and all that stuff.
He understands when a film needs to be 2 hours and when a film needs to be 90 minutes. Like I like that he you know, to use a term from Pig, he can cut the fat really well. He can move that really nicely and get rid of it, because so many editors, there's always one scene where you're like, this didn't need to be in there. This is just a scene for the director's sake. And this film runs 90 minutes, it runs hot, and it gets to the end. Yeah. And again, outside of just expanding upon that relationship, which that may have been a writing issue or a directing issue on expanding that relationship between Luke and Cassie. Outside of that, I don't know if there's a lot of fat to cut, you know?
Right. And so, like I said, I really enjoy the movie. Obviously, there's a lot of flaws to it, but it's a great movie to enjoy. It's a horror movie that keeps you guessing. It's really effective when it's unbalanced and a little discombobulated, unlike Braid, when it's discombobulated all the time. You want some little more clarity, but this is a far more effective case. Yeah, overall, I recommend it.
Yeah, I do too. I think, and again, just like with Braid, though, it's a film where I can see the director's talents shining through the film's flaws. And I want to see more from the director. So I'm interested in seeing this Arch Enemy, because, again, it seems like it's got Joe Manganiello in it, so it must have a slightly bigger budget, I would assume. Right. And it might have a little bit more sandboxy feel to the play, because this feels like a film this feels like a small movie.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to see these guys get a slightly bigger budget on the second one out. And just like with Braid, and just like with the Cronenberg Son, or
Possessor,
or like what we had with Beyond the Black Rainbow, with Panos, second films for a lot of these filmmakers tend to kind of coalesce a little bit more.
I would say, last thing before we go, the effective thing about this movie is I like that it's very darkly lit when Luke is talking about with his mom and family oriented. It's very dark, but everything else seems to be well lit, well bright, except for when we go into the demon's house. So, have you seen Daniel Isn't Real? And we explained to you why he isn't real.
Yeah, definitely. Leave your comments down below on your thoughts on the film. Have you seen Arch Enemy? Do you see any connective tissue in this Vortex trilogy, if you will? And would you watch a third film in that trilogy when it eventually comes out? We want to know your thoughts, so leave those comments down below as well. As always, when you're down there, don't forget to check out the Patreon link is down in the description as well. And like we point out all the time, one of the best ways you can help support the channel outside the Patreon is like, subscribe, comment, share. Those things are all free, and you have no idea what they actually bring to us as creators on the show, and will allow you to see more content more often. But hey, if you've got a couple bucks to spare, you can pick different films with us. Our Patreon exclusive episodes by joining that Patreon down below. And you also get access to Picks with Kyle and Nick, where we have monthly episodes of our chit-chat going all around the world, a little bit more expansive, kind of giving our recommendations. But until next time, you can find all my film reviews at goatfilmreviews.com.
You can find my podcast, the St. Paul Filmcast, anywhere you find podcasts. I'm Nick. I'm sure I'm real, and